Hello, my name is Diego Milne, and today I am presenting to you Robert Frost. So, when you think of Robert Frost, what do you think of first? People might think of his poems, like the most famous ones, such as "The Road Not Taken," "Fire and Ice," or "Birches." Some others might know him for reading "The Gift" outright at JFK's inauguration in 1961, January 20th, I think. Cut that out. Or they know for being the Poet Laureate of Vermont in the 60s. But despite that, there's more than that. Cut that. However, there is more than just all this superficial stuff that you might know. And today I will enlighten you on that and his poetry. Alright, so let's start off with a quick biography. Robert Lee Frost, he was born on March 26, 1874 in California. But he moved to New England when he was a little boy, where he lived for most of his life. In 1895, he married Eleanor Miriam, and he ended up working a lot of jobs before marrying. In 1912, he moved to London, where he published his first two poem books, and it was there in London where he met many modernist poets, such as Ezra Pound and William Butler Yeats. Frost made a best friend in novelist slash poet slash soldier Edward Thomas. And then World War One started in 1914, and then a year later in 1915, Frost moved back to New England, where he was now well known and wrote more poetry. And he lived there for the rest of his life. One thing to note was that a lot of his family died. So his parents, his sister, his wife, Edward Thomas, his best friend, and almost all of his children died before he did. And he died on January 29th, 1963 in Boston, Massachusetts. So some common themes and ideas you can see when reading some Frost poems. He likes to talk about he likes to mention fall and winter a lot, such as the road not taken. Two roads diverge in a yellow wood. Yellow is often associated with the leaves turning yellow, the fall, and stopping by woods on a snowy evening. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Another thing he likes to have is trees. This is prominent, especially in famous poem Birches. Sometimes likes to put in some cows, such as in the pasture. He puts a lot of weather, like wind and snow, such as seen in the Amos song and snow. Another idea he likes to talk about is depicting the common worker folk. I mentioned earlier that Robert Frost worked a lot of jobs. So one of those jobs was like a lamplighter. That was a common worker, making like that's kind of equivalent to a minimum wage job today. And he depicts that nicely in many of his poems, such as "The Census Taker." And here's a big one, common theme and idea. He likes to talk about death and depression and isolation a lot. This is a big thing that you can see in almost like every single one of his poems. And I have some examples here: "Death of a Hired Man," "Home Burial," and "Mending Wall." And here, Dixon says in his master thesis, the experiences of loneliness, anxiety, and sorrow were found to relate to Frost's feeling of separation from nature and from the source of existence. So as you can already tell from all these themes and common ideas, Frost was a nature poet. And since he wrote his poetry mainly in the early 20th century, You could consider him to be a modernist poet. He followed many of their norms, but he also kept the traditional poetry practices as seen during the Romantic period. And as a result, it could be pretty tough to determine whether he is fully a modernist or a romantic poet. And I have some examples here of Frost's poem versus some of his modernist contemporaries. So on the left here, we have Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. As we can see here, the structure is quite nice and tidy. And upon further look, you can see there's a rhyme scheme. A, B, A for every single thing, except for the last one, which is all A's. But on the right side, we have some other poems, some modernist poetry, quite strange in structure. So right here, we have E. Cummings, R. Pop Hessager, yeah, whatever the heck this is. And then we have Ezra Pound's April. Well, it looks kind of normal on first look, but if you look deeper, you can see that this poem is quite lopsided. So first of all, there is no rhyme scheme. That's pretty normal, free verse. But each line has varying amounts of syllables, and the length is all different. And also, there are two stanzas. One is a quatrain, and one is just one line. That's pretty strange. So as you can tell, his style. So as I mentioned earlier, he followed many of the romantics, and one of those things he liked to follow was the style. So he liked to write in blank verse, which is free verse but with a meter, common meter. Usually it's iambic pentameter, and that is seen in Birches or Mending Wall. He likes he liked to write a lot of quatrains with rhyme schemes. For example, the AABB, ABAB, or his classic AABA. And sometimes he wrote a couple sonnets such as Design. And one thing to note is that all of his poems were written in a way anyone who could read English would understand. And as Shawan says in her paper, her academic paper, he is often thought as the simplest of the great English language modernists, even the most simplistic. However, despite being quite easy to read, his poems are very complex, and as Boyana Vujin says in her paper, Robert Frost misleads poet or readers into thinking they understand his poetry. So some techniques he likes to use in many of his poems include imagery, sound words, metaphor, symbol, and illusion. So an example of imagery is in After Apple Picking. The beginning lines, there's a ladder in a tree, apple tree, a very long ladder sticking out. There's a apple barrel next to it. It's somewhat full, some apples left in the tree, and you can see that and picture that in your head. He liked to use sound words, such as the aimless song, like onomatopoeia, blow, blue. Yeah, and he famously said that the ear may be the best of poets. Its cut and concision are whetted by the mind, and its edge honed by hand. He wrote a lot of metaphors, such as the road not taken is extended metaphor for the choices we make in life. He had a lot of symbols in his poems, such as fire and ice in Fire and Ice. And sometimes he liked to include little allusions to stuff. For example, his poem Out, Out references the Macbeth soliloquy when he says, Out, out, brief candle. So, what could be the exemplary poem, you may ask? Taking all of his techniques and style and themes and ideas, I have compiled them into and researched and found that one poem is likely to be his exemplary. So I thought it to be The Sound of Trees. And upon further look, it is made of one stanza, 25 lines, around 6 to 8 syllables per line, but the last one has five, and it's in free verse. It contains many common Frost themes and ideas, such as trees, and it talks a lot about death, but it also has a lot of different things that he doesn't really talk about, such as passing of time and self interests. It has a lot of imagery and symbols, while also containing some other things that he doesn't really include in his poems, such as rhetorical questions and personification. All in all, these are the reasons why I believe The Sound of Trees is the Robert Frost exemplary poem. So, to end off the presentation, I would like to take a look at some poems by Robert Frost, some famous ones, some not so famous ones, and take a look at all the things that we talked about today. So the first poem we're going to read today is Mending Wall. You can find Mending Wall in your Perion's book, page 848, and I'll give you 10 seconds to flip over there so you can follow along. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends this frozen ground swell under it, and spills the upper boulders in the sun, and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding, to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean. No one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to reach the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough when handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is we do not need the wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines. I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly. I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there bringing a stone grass firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only, and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father, saying, and he likes having the thought of it so well, he says again, good fences make good neighbors. So from the reading, the poem is one stanza long, 45 lines, and 10 syllables per line. And it's written in blank verse, which means and the meter is iambic pentameter. So see, the season he's talking about is spring, and the symbols are the wall, the poet, the neighbor, the pine cones and apples on the ground, and the pine and apple trees. So we're not gonna go too deep into Bending Wall, as it's one of Frost's most complex poems. But I'll give you some possible criticisms. For example, a romantic humanist might say, "The wall is an integral part of the early 19th century farming and thus important to keep intact." Someone who favors reader response might say, "The neighbor and the poet are opposites. The neighbor is all serious, while the poet is mischievous." And a Marxist theorist might say, "The poet and neighbor are capitalism and communism. No wall would make the land look shared," which is what the poet believes. The walls doesn't want to be there, or he doesn't want the wall to be there. And a wall would show that the land is divided, shows ownership, private property, as seen in capitalism. And the next poem we'll be looking at is Dust of Snow. It's quite a short one, actually. It can be found on page 657 in the Parines. I'll give 10 seconds to flip over so you can follow along if you would like. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. So a little short and sweet. It's, two stanzas, 8 lines, so two quatrains. There are 4 to 6 syllables per line, and the rhyme scheme is A B A B C D C D. So as you can tell, the season is winter since there's snow, and possible symbols: the crow, the dust of snow he sprinkles on the poet, and the hemlock tree. Like I said before, we're not going to go too deep. So someone who favors new criticism might say, "This is all coincidence and it ended up making the poet happy. This could be how little things happen by accident and they cheer us up." Someone who favors a reader response might say, "Crows are smart, so it is possible that the crow did this on purpose. Frost highlights the genius of the Corvus Corone." And a psychoanalytic might say, "The poem seems to be about sadness and happiness. The poet is all gloomy until the crow drops snow on his head. Also, it is possible that the poet has bipolar disorder." Alright, so quick conclusion. Frost's life, tragic life, led him to writing the poetry the way he did. Uh, he's a nature poet, and his poems featured fall and winter trees. He was a structure guy, a big structure guy, unlike his modernist contemporaries, which meant he liked to follow meter as well, blank verse. He also liked to include imagery, symbols, and sound words in his poems. And I believe The Sound of Trees contains all these common things and many more things that Frost doesn't really do. As a result, I think it best exemplifies his work. A quick comparison: Robert Frost is like LeBron James, Sr. He could be the GOAT, but he's definitely the best all around poet. Here is my work cited, and have a good day. Good day.